Hi everybody, Richard Kirkham here from Kirkham A Movie A Day. It's been nearly 6 months since I last posted a video blog, and I promised myself I was going to do it more frequently, and I haven't kept that promise to myself, so I thought I'd better get back into the habit this summer. I was having a little bit of trouble getting enough enthusiasm to write in detail about today's movie, not because it wasn't good, but because I'm still not quite sure how I want to put all of my thoughts together. I may write about it later in the summer if I see it again, but I thought because I did see it today and I've been pretty consistent about keeping up with giving people my impressions of films in a timely manner, that this would be a good way to go about doing it. So today's movie is X-Men Days of Future Past. I've liked all of the X-Men movies for the most part. As I've said in many of my posts, I'm not really a big comic book guy. I enjoy comic book movies, and so I don't have the story background that a lot of people probably have, and I don't have the emotional investment in some characters that apparently a lot of the fans do. So if the movie is coherent to me, if I care about the characters and the context of the film that I'm looking at, and if I'm taken along by the story, as far as I'm concerned, it works pretty well. I know there have been happy and unhappy views of the X-Men films over the years. Just looking back at the ones that have been out so far, my personal favorite is X-Men 2, probably one of the finest comic book movies I've seen. Maybe there's something about being the number 2 film in a series, especially in comic book movies, because The Dark Knight, Spider-Man 2 also fit into that category. They seem to be the top-notch parts of those franchises. I also liked X-Men First Class immensely. That was 3 years ago, and I thought it was a very well-made film and set up kind of an origin story that was a little bit different and more involving. X-Men was great. The X-Men Wolverine movie from last summer I thought was satisfying. I know a lot of people haven't cared much for the standalone Wolverine films. I thought they were both entertaining, although I did think the last one was a lot more effective than the X-Men Wolverine Origins. And there's a huge amount of criticism of X-Men Last Stand. As an action film, I think it's probably perfectly fine. It's pretty spectacular. There were some good set pieces. I only saw it the one time, and I know that a lot of people loathe it because it apparently does things with the timelines and the stories that fans of the film franchise don't really appreciate. To me, Days of Future Past, it can almost be a standalone movie. You do need to have a little bit of background about what was going on. Probably if you'd seen X-Men First Class, you would be fine keeping up with what's going on. The references to earlier X-Men films, though, they are throughout the film, so there is a lot of reference to other story bits and elements, but it's usually done in a way that's pretty coherent and easy for people to follow. To me, this will be X-Men Days of Future Past will rank probably among the top 2 or 3 X-Men movies, maybe right below First Class. I would say that it's really very good. It is a time travel story, though, and time travel stories in science fiction are great sometimes, but they can also be a little confusing. The problem and it's not a big problem, but the problem I had a little bit today was that you have a story that's taking place in the future, you have a contemporary story, and then you have a past story, and they're trying to kind of keep those things all going simultaneously. And I won't say it was confusing, but it certainly seemed cluttered and a little bit convoluted at times. And there were times when things happened without any particular rhyme or reason. They try to set up some of those events in the story, but they don't always succeed at making it as clear as it could be. Take a sip of your soda, relax a second, and just let the movie flow over you. I think you'll be fine. The movie looks great. It's really put together nicely. It's pretty effective. I know that Bryan Singer was responsible for the first 2 X-Men movies, and right now he's persona non grata, but he's done a good job with his third X-Men movie, and I think it came across pretty well. There are some early fights with the Sentinels, the villains of the piece, if you will, and I liked the fact that you could kind of follow what was going on, even though I didn't remember all of the characters well, and I was trying to kind of figure out their powers as we went along. It was usually pretty easy to follow. When there's this whole mythology and background that's going on, it usually helps to be steeped in that so that you can follow the story. On the other hand, if you have this whole mythology going on and you are really, wrapped up in that kind of thing, then any deviation from it is probably going to irritate you. So, I would say this is probably a good film for people like me who are not addicts to the stories but feel pretty positively about the characters and the ideas in the story. The Sentinels themselves, I think, are... they're ominous in the background, but they unfortunately look so CGI, and there's so much of that high-tech element to them. There's another layer that opens up, and they adapt, that it feels a little bit artificial to me. I'm that way with a lot of CGI films nowadays. Sometimes when they do the CGI and it's just for the purpose of making something spectacular to look at, I can understand and appreciate that. But these are supposed to be characters that are real and threatening, and they were fine, but I was not overly impressed with that part of the story. I'll tell you what I was impressed with, the setting of the film back in 1973. I thought that was interesting, the way that they tried to set up a time travel story for things to work out, and then most of the movie takes place in this 1973 setting. Dr. Xavier is... He has lost the use of his legs, but he's kind of taking a medication that allows him to use his legs, but it suppresses his mental powers. And he and Wolverine, who is returned back in time, and Beast have to find Magneto and recruit him to engage in the process. And then there's some other characters that come up that are very entertaining characters that become part of the story. That's a little bit of a quest type of story. Well, we need this person to help us. We need this person to help us. And they go through a series of those kinds of things to put things together. But it all worked out nicely in the end, and I think you'll find that it makes a lot of sense. But the look of 1973 is pretty effective, and they found some interesting people to portray characters from 1973. I think they've got a pretty good Nixon impersonator. Like I said, the movie looks good. I wasn't quite sure why we had some of the drama that comes up at the end when we get basically a football stadium relocated. There's not a whole lot of point to doing that, but it looks good on screen, so let's make it as spectacular as we possibly can. Let's see. The historical context is a little bit interesting in this movie as well. They're getting ready to sign the Paris Peace Accords. Everybody seems to be referring to it as an American defeat. Now, I was around in 1973. I was 15 years old. I don't think that most of us looked at it as a defeat. We looked at it as finally we're out of this mess, and hopefully people will be able to take care of themselves. I don't want to get involved in the politics of the war. That's still controversial 45, 50 years after the whole thing happened. But I tell you that it's interesting the way that it's perceived in the movie, and the way that they kind of go about developing a couple of the characters as a consequence. Like I said, the Nixon character is portrayed in an interesting way. There are several references to JFK, and they're a little bit surprising. They kind of came out of left field. They don't do anything with it except kind of make I don't want to say a joke about it, but it's a story point, and it doesn't really go anywhere. But if they're going to keep that as part of the background of the mythology, I guess it'll make for some interesting reference points down the road. I don't expect that it'll ever come up again as part of the discussion. Just one of those things. I do think that you learn a couple of things in the course of the movie that we probably knew already. Never trust Magneto. I mean, even when he appears to be on your side, there are things that are just not right. There's something a little bit suspicious. He He plays self-righteous very well. Michael Fassbender is a terrific actor. James McAvoy is also very good. They are the main characters in the film, even though you have a lot of other characters too. And Hugh Jackman, of course, plays the lead, but he is not the primary driver of the story. He's kind of our passenger narrator of the story. So they were pretty good. Jennifer Lawrence, I think, is underused here. I think her character gets a few scenes where she creates some havoc, and her actions are the thing that kind of move the plot. But I don't really think that there's a very clear explanation of it. And in the long run, you know what? There's not enough of Jennifer Lawrence as Jennifer Lawrence character in the movie. There's a little bit of Mystique, a little bit of Raven, and then there's just a lot of the image that's going on there, and they use that a lot to just kind of make the next thing happen. It's fine, and I know I sound like I'm less enthusiastic than I really am. I'm just picking out things that bothered me to point those out, because there were so many things that are very positive about the movie also. I'll tell you what, ultimately I think X-Men Days of Future Past accomplishes a few things that will make people who are fans of this franchise very happy. First of all, it closes the gaps between the X-Men First Class and the X-Men Wolverine story that we saw last summer. It kind of fills in some of those gaps, makes things fit together. They get the timeline fixed, so to speak, so that we get some sense that maybe all of these things could have occurred in the sequence that the movies come up. And I think they do a pretty good job selling that. The best thing that they managed to do is they managed to erase any of the bad choices that they've made over the course of the last few films. It's like they're wiping the slate clean with this film in an interesting way, and now they have a fresh slate. They can start over. Rebooting is easy to do. Characters have been left in place, and you don't have to worry about all of this other background, including the bad story elements that so many people who are fans of the X-Men films disliked about, especially The Last Stand. So I think that fans of the film franchise are going to like it a lot. Everybody else is going to enjoy it a great deal. There are a few things about it that might be bothersome to some people, like me, like I said, but it's not. They're certainly not things that make it a bad movie. It's a very good movie. It's very entertaining, and I think everybody in the long run will probably enjoy it. So until next time, like I said, I'll try and do a few more video posts along the road. But if you can't watch the videos, don't forget to read my posts on Kirkham a Movie a Day. And if you haven't started looking at the 30 Years On project, I'd be happy to have you come by and visit me there, because we're going to have a great summer. I just posted the Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom post, and that's really the official start of summer for 1984, and there are a whole bunch of things that are coming up that I think you're going to enjoy. All right, thanks for stopping by. Have a good one.